Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror movie review for day 12 of my 31 Days of Halloween Horror series here for October. So, today we're going to take a look at a pretty well known werewolf movie that surprisingly it's the first time that I'd seen this movie for this review, sad as it is, but that is from 1981, The Howling, which I have this great edition, collector's edition from Scream Factory here. All the special features, which I have not checked out yet. But I'm excited to do that at some point here. So yeah, The Howling, though, from 1981 by Joe Dante. So this is a film that I've heard quite a bit about. I know it came out the same year as some other werewolf films like Wolfen and obviously uh, why can't I think of it now? An American Werewolf in London. Um, and there's another one too, Full Moon High, I think. Um, which I haven't seen those other ones either. I've seen American Werewolf in London. In fact, I think I did that. I think I included that either in May of this year or October of last year in my 31 series that I did. But we're here to talk about The Howling from 1981. So, The Howling is a 1981 American horror film directed by Joe Dante. It's based on the novel of the same name by Gary Brandner. Um, it received generally positive reviews with praise for its makeup special effects by Rob Bottin. Um, the film actually won the 1980 Saturn Award for Best Horror Film while still in development and was one of the three high profile werewolf themed horror films released in 1981 alongside An American Werewolf in London and Wolfen. So basically, this is a movie that opens with Karen White, who's a Los Angeles television news anchor who is being stalked by a serial killer, Eddie Quist. In cooperation with the police, she takes part in a scheme to capture Eddie by agreeing to meet him in a sleazy porn theater. Eddie forces Karen to watch a video of a young woman being bound and raped, and when Karen turns around to see Eddie, she screams. The police the police enter and shoot Eddie, and although Karen is safe, she suffers amnesia. Her therapist, Dr. George Wagner, decides to send her and her husband, Bill Neal, to the Colony, a secluded resort in the countryside where he sends patients for treatment. The colony is filled with strange creatures, and one, a sultry nymphomaniac named Marcia, tries to seduce Bill. When he resists her unsubtle sexual overtures, he is attacked and scratched on the arm by a werewolf while returning to the cabin. After Bill's attack, Karen summons her friend Terry Fisher to the colony, and Terry connects the resort to Eddie through a sketch he left behind, having previously discovered that Eddie Quist, that is, his body has disappeared from the morgue. So that's sort of the setup and the premise, the beginning of the film, if you will. As far as the cast goes, of course, we have Dee Wallace as Karen White, Patrick Macnee as Dr. George Wagner, Dennis Dugan as Chris Halloran, Christopher Stone as William Bill Neal, Belinda Belaski as Terry Fisher, Kevin McCarthy as Fred Francis, John Cordine as Early Kenton, Sam Pickens as Sam Newfield, Elizabeth Brooks as Marcia Quist, and Robert Picardo as Eddie Quist. So that's to set up the premise and the cast for The Howling from 1981. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed this movie for the most part. I do have a few problems with it. It's definitely not a perfect movie. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with the things that I liked about it or my pros. So obviously, when you talk about this movie, just like An American Werewolf in London, you have to talk about the transformation and practical effects that are used in the movie. Definitely has a great werewolf transformation effect scene. Very cool and effective. Maybe the best. I say maybe because I've only seen these movies once. Same with American Werewolf in London. So I don't feel comfortable saying which one has the best werewolf effects yet, but this one's going to be right up there. Um, Probably the best. It came out in 1981, as I said, maybe. Rob Bottin did a top notch job, though, of making the transformation creepy and believable. Yeah, I mean, like I said, just like with American Werewolf in London, that film and this film always get compared to each other when it comes to the practical effects in general, but more specifically the effects related to the werewolf transformation scenes in those particular movies. And as I said, I'll have to watch them a few more times before I can tell you which one I think is the best. But this was very impressive, and that's a huge part, a huge pro to this movie. I also like that the movie sort of started off like something else. They kind of have this serial killer, almost slasher setup within the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie. And then it changes, of course, to the werewolf shapeshifter kind of movie. I thought that was pretty unique and different, kind of a fun transition that subverted expectations for the first time watching this movie. And I thought it worked pretty well for the most part because obviously the name The Howling, you assume that it's going to be something about werewolves at some point. But at the same time, the way the film starts off, it wouldn't. I'm sure back in 1981, a lot of people didn't. They probably thought this was getting into some sort of a serial killer slasher movie. So I give them props for that. The rest of the wolf effects as well, especially the makeup effects, all practical, of course, during this time are really great. The look of the characters that aren't full blown werewolf yet, but are getting there, between the eyes and the face, and just the hair that's starting, the transition period basically is really effective and really creepy. And a lot of our main characters end up going through those transformation effects. So that was another thing that was really good. Um, you have solid sound design as well in this movie with the sound of the werewolves, the howling off in the distance, just the werewolf sounds like the growling and stuff like that. I thought it was really effective, really good. Obviously my best and my favorite scene, the best scene in my opinion, is the one where Eddie Quist stumbles upon Karen, played by Dee Wallace, and then transforms in front of her to show her what he is and what he's become, and he's proud of it. Obviously, that's just the most realistic transformation scene maybe I've seen ever in any movie. As I said, I haven't seen them all, and I've only seen an American Werewolf in London once. I do remember that transformation scene, and it's that one's almost more of a special effects. Like, look what we can do with extending certain body parts. This one almost seems more realistic to me, like how it would look if somebody went from human to a werewolf, and they really stay on it for about 3 or 4 minutes. So that's definitely a highlight of this movie. I love the ending of the movie with the whole news broadcast that they try to do in the final scene in the bar as well. Um, Kind of letting you know that not all is right in the world. I thought it was very effective and a scary way to close out the movie, especially the sort of the news broadcast. If you know, you know. I'm not going to say too much about it, but yeah, it's a very it was a very effective way to close out the movie, both in terms of um, sort of character full circle as well as just a creepy vibe to end the movie. Very effective. They do a great job being believable in their roles. And speaking about the performances, especially that of Dee Wallace and Dennis Dugan, who I think were the two that stood out the most to me. Everybody's okay in their roles. I don't think there's any bad acting, but Dee Wallace and Dennis Dugan specifically, they do a great job being believable in their roles, which adds to the suspense of the movie that we feel in the last third. Also, the score and the musical cues used are very effective. Definitely add to the tension and the suspense in the movie. And then finally, you got to talk about how well the movie looks. It's a really well shot, good cinematography kind of movie that just it really makes for great atmosphere, especially the part of the movie where they're outdoors, out in the woods, at the colony, if you will. Just great atmosphere there, especially at nighttime, but even during the day, just great stuff there. So, yeah, those are my pros for the Howling. A lot of good stuff about this movie. As far as cons goes, there's really not much of a story here. That's the biggest one. It's just kind of a generic story. It's basically more of a movie about werewolf transformations and things like that. As far as the story goes, like I said, I give them props for the sort of the subverting expectations in terms of starting what you think the movie's going to be one way and then having it go to another way. But as far as the story related to the werewolves, it's just kind of there. There's nothing very unique about it. Um, honestly, I have to say I was kind of bored at certain parts in this movie. The middle of the movie didn't really hold my attention the whole time with the story or what was going on all the way through. Now, the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, I would say the first 20 minutes and the last 30 to 40 minutes are really good, and I was into it. But there's a lull in there about half an hour's worth. That was just kind of there were a few times that I had to catch myself as I was closing my eyes. It just it's just characters doing stuff, but they're not really doing a lot of stuff that's related to the horror part of the movie or really anything all that interesting, to be honest with you. Um, Eddie Quist dies a little bit too easily and a little too quickly, in my opinion. I would have liked a little bit more of a confrontation or struggle there when you set up this character, kind of the main villain of the movie, if you will, or certainly one of the main villains going all the way back to the beginning of the movie, you would expect a little bit more at the end than I thought. And I get the fact that a certain character has silver bullets. Man, I can't speak, and that takes them out. But I don't know. It just felt a little too quick, a little too rushed for me for a character that was built up so much. And then my final con is I'm not sure the two investigators were all that necessary in the movie. I felt like they kind of took away from the focus of Karen and Bill and the colony overall that most of the movie's focused on, obviously. Not saying the actor or actress does a bad job in those investigator roles. In fact, Dennis Dugan does a good job, as I mentioned. I think he's one of the performances that stand out. But from a character standpoint and an overall movie flow standpoint, I think they could have got away without him, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure how necessary they really were. So those are my cons. I don't know if anybody shares those cons at all. Those are just some things that stood out to me. Obviously, there's a lot more I like about the movie than I don't. And I'm really glad to have this Scream Factory collector's edition of The Howling from 1981. So, for what it is as a werewolf movie, I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty effective for the most part, especially as I said with the practical effects, Rob Bottin's work. There's even one scene where a character cuts off the arm of a werewolf, and I thought that was pretty effective. Really gnarly practical effects stuff going on there. So that and the performances by the main character, Dee Wallace, which I think is really solid and good direction as well. Um, by Joe Dante. It's not my favorite film by him, I would say, at this point, but it's a very good one. And then again, the cinematography and the way it's shot is very good. So, 8 out of 10 for The Howling from 1981. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of The Howling, the first one from 1981. Do you like it? Why not? Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series. And be sure to subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content, this series and beyond. So, yeah, I know there's like 7 or 8 more Howling movies after this one. I'm not necessarily in a rush to check any of them out from what I've heard. This is definitely the best one by all accounts, and everybody I've talked to that have seen the others. So, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review for day 12 of my 31 Days of Halloween horror series. And happy October once again, and stay scared. Bye.